discuss some advanced util debating, specifically some good strategic practices on both sides, the AF and the neg, in high-level policy or util rounds. We'll first start by talking about some strategic practices for the affirmative. The first thing is that everyone knows the 1AR is tough, probably the toughest speech of debate. You have 4 minutes to cover a 7-minute 1C spread. The 2NR then gets to pick its battles with 6-minute collapse. The way to lose debates is to let the 2NR collapse just for 6 minutes on one particular position. Then that means you pretty much lose most of the time, because the AF will have made maybe a few arguments in the time-crunched 1AR. They can't predict the 2NR collapse, and the 2AR has 3 minutes to pick up the pieces. The way to win AF debates, though, especially more policy-centric ones, is to instead split the 2NR. By that I mean you generate offense. If you have a lot of offense in the 1AR, the 2NR then can't just, kick out of whatever they read in the 1C and go for their favorite position. They have to then play defense against the 1AR's offense. That strategically can flip time skew in favor of the affirmative, because then the 2NR is maybe giving a 3 to 4 minute speech on its best position, and then the time balance between the 3-minute 2AR and the 3-minute 2, the functionally 3-minute 2NR then, is much more even, and you get the last word. So what are some ways to generate offense? The first is new theory. I hesitate to suggest this in terms of frivolous theory arguments, because those can be blown off by the 2NR and don't work for a lot of judges. But arguments like counterplan theory, like conditionality, picks bad, agent counterplans bad, etc., especially if they're developed, can be very good for splitting the 2NR. You can spend maybe 30 to 40 seconds on this and eat up 2 minutes of 2NR time, and then also have a little bit of an eject button in case things in substance aren't going the right way, that you can then collapse to those. The second thing is something like an RBI. Even if you don't intend to go for it, I was always a fan when I debated of putting out a 10 to 15 second RVI no matter what happened in the 1AR if the 1NC included theory, because then the 2NR to avoid the 2NR generally has to overcover on that, and again, if they blow it off, that's something that the 2AR, that 15 to 20 seconds is enough for the 2AR to really explode on it if you're efficient in that time. The third thing to do is to start setting up weighing. If you are ready to start basically saying, K-set ways, going for a particular advantage, then you're in a much better spot. Whereas if the 2NR is the first speech that does weighing, the 2AR is always behind. The fourth thing is straight turn or impact turn disads, especially ones they don't want to go for. If the 1NC includes a disgustingly short disad of some sort that just they can't go for, and you just straight turn it or impact turn it, you're in a really good spot, because the 2NR then has to either extend it or just read defense to your offense to go for something different. So what might this 1AR look like? If you did all of those things, you have an RBI, a new theory argument, you've straight turned a disat, and said K-set ways, that is 4 layers that the 2NR then has to go through just to access their primary source of offense, which is devastating because the 2AR can pick its battles and go for one of those. And relatedly, that brings us to thinking 2AR backwards. Too many times people in the 1AR just think about what is an argument I can say to beat this argument, but not what is the 2AR I want to give. If there is an argument that you couldn't give a 2AR on, it shouldn't be in the 1AR. It should kind of pass the I dare you test, I like to call it. If the 2NR's answer to an argument is this argument is so bad, I'm not going to really answer it, I dare you to give the 2AR on this, you shouldn't make it. And an argument needs to be something that you'd feel comfortable actually going for. And this is kind of echoing the first 2 points, but bold moves win championships. By that I mean, if you are willing to straight turn a disad, impact turn something, be risky in the 1AR. That generally tends to work out. So even if you were, for example, just getting hosed on some counterplan that solves the AF, maybe you just don't have a real solvency deficit, but you are willing to be gutsy, to impact turn the net benefit, something like that. That is what is strategic. And I think when you're prepping files, being ready to go and thinking through, having your impact turns ready, thinking about disads you could straight turn, and just being willing to put out 1AR outs is the move. Shifting to strategic stuff on the neg, whereas the app will generally try to make the round smaller, i.e. they'll want to be able to force the 2NR to cover its bases, but still the 2AR will collapse to 1 to 2 big arguments. The job of the neg is to spread the AF out in the 1NC, and I think strategically constructing 1NCs that way are very helpful. But this should be done 2NR backwards. The caveat I'll add is that yes, big 1NCs are good because you can spread the AF out, but the same test I mentioned before about if you couldn't go for an argument if the other person functionally dropped it, then you shouldn't include it, certainly applies to being negative as well. So for example, if you read a disad that's 1 card long and just has 0 warrants anywhere, and the AF is just no warrant, I'm not answering this, and you couldn't extend it, then don't go for it. You should always debate the best version of your opponent's arguments and the best version of your opponent. So you should make if there's an argument in your 1 and C, you should feel ready to give a 2 and R on it, which I think is our second point. Think 2 and R backwards. You should not just put things in just to fill up space. You should have as many viable 2 and Rs as possible. You additionally want to make it possible to force the 1AR to restart, either with theory or reading a bunch of cards on something. That's why I'm not a fan of primarily defensive strategies like reading a ton of impact defense, where the AF can just reiterate kind of the cards in their AF and move on. When you have things like reading multiple disads, a strategic counterplan, impact turns, etc., you force the 1AR to read cards, which takes a lot of time and pushes the debate more on your side because you've kind of shifted them off being able to just rely on the 1AC evidence, and you force the introduction of new variables, which I think is the way to be strategic when debating on the negative.